expecting you for some time.
What?
I apologize for the delay. There were unforeseen circumstances.
What do you think about the recent changes?
It's a lot to consider.
And I want to make sure that people understand what that means.
I think it's important that we discuss the upcoming family gathering.
Yes, I agree. There are a few things we need to finalize.
They say it's haunted, but I don't believe in such things.
Perhaps there's a logical explanation for what people have seen.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking about. 这手表，为什么我会这样？
We need to ensure that everyone has access to clean water and sanitation facilities in this region.
If you're gonna keep this up, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. I'm sorry, sir. It won't happen again.
These seedlings are looking really good. Yeah, they should be ready to plant soon.
The rain had
I
just
understand your
stopped when
concern,
Min adjusted
but
his
we need to
uniform.
ensure this
The
area
faint
is safe
smell
for
of wet
everyone
earth
before we
still
can proceed
clinging
with
to the
any
narrow
further work.
alleys of his town. He was a policeman, still young, only in his late 20s, but his shoulders carried a weight that seemed far heavier than his years. Today was not about chasing thieves or handling disputes. Today was about something far more personal, his mother, and the debt that had haunted her like a shadow for years. Min's mother, Lian, had returned home only a few months ago. Prison had hardened her face, lined her with years of regret, but inside her heart was softer than ever, filled with guilt. She had once been swept away by greed and poor choices, gambling, quick money schemes, bad company. That road had ended with handcuffs, humiliation, and time behind bars. For Min, a policeman who had chosen a path of discipline and justice, it was a shame that clung to his name. And yet, when the gates had opened and she stepped back into the world, gaunt but determined, he had taken her hand and said quietly, "You're still my mother. We will start again." But starting again was not easy when old debts lingered. One particular debt weighed most heavily, $15 million borrowed from a local lender before her arrest. With interest and time, the sum had grown, hanging over them like a storm cloud. The lender had already come knocking, reminding them that the deadline had passed and threatening to take everything if payment was not made. At night, Min lay awake, his wife beside him, thinking of ways to gather the money. His salary as a policeman was modest, barely enough to cover food, rent, and the needs of their small household. His wife, Lan, worked part-time at a small shop, her earnings little more than a supplement. Together, they could not hope to gather so much money in such a short time. It was Lan who first suggested they swallow their pride and ask for help. "There is that man," she said quietly one evening as they sat at the wooden table in their dim kitchen. "The one we met when buying this house. The kind man who spoke gently to your mother. He has means. Maybe he can lend us something, just until you get your salary. We will pay it back. Min, you can't carry this all alone." Min had hesitated. Asking for help went against the grain of his pride, his uniform, his identity as a man who protected others. But when he saw the worry etched on his wife's face, and when he heard his mother weeping softly in the next room, Guilt choking her sobs, he knew he had no choice. The next morning, under a heavy sky, Min and Lan walked with his mother to the outskirts of the town, where the man lived. The distance was 3 or 4 kilometers, his mother complaining softly that it was far, though her son insisted it was not too much. Min carried an envelope with what little savings they had managed to scrape together, barely enough to cover small expenses, nothing close to the full debt. He prayed silently that the man would be willing to help. When they reached the small rented house, the man was outside sweeping the yard. His name was Hugh, though most people simply called him Uncle. He was not rich, not in the way of landowners or businessmen, but he had steady work, savings, and above all, a generous heart. He looked up as they approached, his eyes crinkling into a smile. "Ah, you've come. Come inside," Hugh said warmly, wiping his hands and gesturing toward the wooden chairs inside his modest home. Lean lowered her eyes, ashamed. It was Min who stepped forward, his voice formal but trembling with emotion. "Uncle Hugh, I came today to thank you. My mother told me yesterday that you met her, that you lent her money. Without you, we would have had nowhere else to turn." Hugh waved his hand dismissively, as though brushing away the weight of those words. "It was nothing. I have some money saved, and when I saw your mother's situation, I pitied her. If my small help can ease her burden, then I am glad to give it. I don't need it urgently. You can return it when you are able." Min bowed his head, the knot in his chest loosening slightly. "Still, I am grateful. Truly. When I receive my salary, I will return it to you. Please let me know if you ever need it back suddenly. We will manage somehow." Hugh poured them tea, the steam rising gently between them. "Don't worry yourself," he said. "I am not in a hurry. I have enough for now. Take care of your mother first. Use the money wisely, pay off the debt, and free her from that weight." Lan placed her hand on Min's arm, squeezing softly. Relief washed across her face. Even Lien, still quiet with shame, dared to lift her gaze and murmur, "Thank you. I don't deserve this kindness, but thank you." They spoke a while longer, Hugh reminding them to be cautious, to lock their doors at night, to stand firm against hardship. Finally, with many bows and words of thanks, Min rose. "We must go now, Uncle. My mother's creditor is waiting. We will use this money to pay what she owes." As they left, the sky broke into pale sunlight, as though blessing their steps. The envelope now felt heavier in Min's hands, not with weight, but with responsibility. He had been given a chance, a kindness. It was up to him to make sure it was not wasted. Behind him, his mother walked slowly, leaning on her son's arm. For the first time in months, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. The road to the creditor's house was rough and uneven, lined with patches of grass and broken stones. Min walked steadily, the envelope heavy in his pocket. Every step felt weighted not only with the money he carried, but also with the shame and hope bound up in it. Beside him, his mother Lien walked slowly, her breathing uneven, while Lan trailed close behind, her eyes filled with quiet worry. Lien's thoughts churned with every step. The memories of her past mistakes haunted her. The games of chance in hidden corners, the thrill of winning small sums, and the crushing despair of losing everything. That was how it had started, the downward spiral that had ended in prison. She knew the shame she had brought to her son, a policeman who wore the uniform of the law, while she had sat behind bars. And now, even free, she was not free at all. Not while this debt remained. Min tried not to show his nerves. He was trained to keep his face calm even when his heart was unsettled, but inside he worried. Would the creditor accept the money? Would he demand more? And what if he refused? They could not raise more than this. 18 million, collected through Hugh's kindness, through his mother's small sacrifices of chickens and fish, through his own savings. It was all they had. When they reached the house, the creditor was already waiting. His name was Fuck, a man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a build hardened by years of labor. He was not a cruel man, but neither was he gentle. Money was his bloodline, and debt was a business that allowed little room for pity. He greeted them with a tight smile that did not reach his eyes. "So you've come," he said, motioning for them to sit inside his shaded veranda. A stack of papers lay on the wooden table, neat but ominous, the written proof of the debt. Lean lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze. Min cleared his throat and spoke first, his voice steady but respectful. "Yes, Uncle Fuck. We have come to settle my mother's debt. Here is the money." He placed the envelope carefully on the table. Fook tapped it with his finger, then opened it slowly, counting the bills with meticulous care. 18 million, he said flatly. "But that is not enough. With interest, your mother owes 20. The word struck Leon like a blow. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Please, Uncle. We have tried everything. We sold what little we had. My son borrowed from a kind friend. We only have this much. Please have mercy." Fuck leaned back, his eyes narrowing. "Mercy? Your mother borrowed 15 million. It has been over a year. The agreement was clear, 5 days. Instead, she vanished, disappeared into prison. Do you know what I thought? That she had cheated me, that I would never see a single coin again." His words were sharp, and Leon flinched with each one. Min clenched his jaw, forcing himself to remain calm. "I understand," he said evenly. "My mother has made mistakes, but I am here now, as her son, to repay what she owes. This money is all we could gather. It may not be 20, but it is close. Please accept it as full payment." Fook drummed his fingers on the table, his gaze shifting from Min to Leanne and back again. "Close is not enough. If everyone paid me close, I would be ruined. You think I don't have debts myself? I built this house. I still owe others. Why should I take a loss because of your mother's mistakes?" Silence fell. The only sound was the faint buzz of cicadas outside. Leon's eyes filled with tears, her voice breaking. "I know I was wrong. I know I disgraced myself, my son, everyone. But please, if you take this, I will be free. I want to start again. I swear I will never fall into that life again. Just this once. Forgive the rest." Her words cracked open something in Min's chest. To hear his mother beg like this, her dignity stripped away, was almost unbearable. He wanted to speak, to argue, but he knew anger would only harden Fook's heart. So he waited, his hands clenched tightly in his lap, his face calm though his pulse thundered. Finally, Fuck exhaled through his nose, shaking his head slowly. "If it were anyone else, I would demand every last coin, perhaps even more, for the trouble. But you," he looked at Min, "you are a policeman. You came here honestly with respect. And your mother," his gaze flicked to Leanne, who sat trembling before him, "is old and has suffered enough. 18 then, I will accept it." Leanne gasped, clasping her hands together. Lan let out a quiet breath of relief, her eyes shining. Min bowed his head deeply. "Thank you, Uncle Fuck. You have lifted a great burden from us. I promise, You will not regret this. Fuck waved his hand, pulling the stack of papers toward him. With deliberate strokes, he signed and stamped the documents, then handed one across the table. Here, proof that the debt is cleared. No more obligations. But remember this, debt is a chain. Break free of it once, and never let it bind you again. Leanne took the paper with shaking hands, pressing it to her chest as though it were a precious jewel. Tears rolled down her cheeks, falling onto the ink. Min reached over, steadying her hand, his heart swelling with both relief and sorrow. For the first time in years, the shadow that had loomed over their family began to lift. The debt was gone. The past could not be erased, but perhaps the future could be rewritten. As they left Fuchs' house, the air seemed lighter, the sky brighter. Leanne walked a little taller, though her steps were still slow. Lan reached for Min's hand, squeezing it firmly. "It's over," she whispered. "We can breathe again." Min nodded, though inside he felt the echo of responsibility still heavy. "Yes," he said softly, "it's over." But he knew this was only the beginning of another journey. The journey of rebuilding trust, healing wounds, and proving that their family could stand strong again. The walk back from Fuchs' house felt lighter than the journey there, though their bodies were weary. The folded piece of paper in Leanne's hands was worth more than gold. It was proof that the chains of debt had finally been broken. Yet the weight of years past still pressed on her chest. As they neared their small home, the sun was already lowering, casting a gentle orange hue across the sky. The air smelled of wet soil, faintly sweet after the afternoon rain. Lan pushed open the door, and for a moment they all stood there in silence, gazing at the modest rooms, the simple bamboo furniture, the walls patched with effort. It was not much, but it was theirs. Leanne lowered herself onto a low stool. Her hands, calloused from years of labor and punishment alike, trembled as she unfolded the receipt once more, staring at the ink as though it might disappear if she blinked. Tears welled in her eyes. "It is really finished," she whispered. "After all this time, it is finished." Min placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Yes, Mother, it is finished. You are free now." But inside, Leanne did not feel free, not entirely. She thought of the chickens she had raised, the fish she had sold, all scraped together in desperation. 3 million from her effort, 18 million gathered through her son's sacrifice and Hio's kindness. The debt was gone, but the shame remained. She had watched her son, a man of the law, bow his head to a creditor because of her. That image would never leave her. "Min," she said suddenly, her voice raw, "I am so sorry." Her son looked at her, puzzled. "Sorry? For everything. For the nights I left you alone when you were just a boy. For the food I gambled away. For the years in prison while you carried the family name alone. And today you had to beg and borrow because of me." She covered her face with her hands, the tears spilling freely now. "I do not deserve to sit here. I do not deserve a son like you." Min knelt beside her, his uniform trousers brushing the dusty floor. He gently pulled her hands away from her face. "Mother, look at me." Reluctantly, she raised her eyes. What she saw there was not anger, nor shame, but steady warmth. "You are my mother," he said quietly. "Nothing can change that. Yes, you made mistakes, but you came back. You want to change. That is what matters. Do not talk of what you deserve. Talk only of what you will do from now on." Lan, who had been quietly setting a kettle on the stove, added softly, We are together now. That is enough. We can build again, step by step. Lean pressed the paper to her chest again, nodding through her tears. For the first time in years, she dared to believe that perhaps she could truly begin again. That night, the three of them shared a simple meal: steamed vegetables from the garden, rice, and a small dish of fish that Leanne had salted earlier. There was no meat, no luxury, but the food tasted sweeter than any feast. They ate slowly, savoring not only the flavors, but the silence of peace, the knowledge that no knock would come at the door demanding payment. After the dishes were cleared, Min stepped outside, gazing at the stars that pierced the velvet night. His thoughts wandered back to Yu, the man whose kindness had made all this possible. He vowed silently that he would repay him soon, not only in money, but in loyalty and respect. Behind him, Leanne sat by the dim lamp, watching her son's tall figure framed in the doorway. She remembered him as a boy, chasing chickens in the yard, his laughter filling the air. She remembered the day he had first worn his uniform, standing proud, vowing to uphold justice. And she remembered how her actions had stained that pride. Her heart ached, but also swelled with determination. "I will change," she whispered to herself. "I will never let him bow his head again because of me." The following morning, the village stirred to life early. Roosters crowed, vendors called out from the road, and the smell of fresh bread drifted through the air. Lion rose with the dawn, slipping quietly into the yard. She scattered feed for the remaining chickens, her movements deliberate, her mind clear. She would build again.